Słuchasz podcastu Angielski z Konradem. Nowe odcinki każdego tygodnia. Jeśli chcesz popracować nad płynnością, nabrać odwagi do konwersacji, skorygować często popełniane błędy bądź poznać skuteczne metody nauki, ta audycja jest dla Ciebie. Remember, you're not at school, so chill out, kick back and enjoy yourself. Let's begin. Witaj w kolejnym odcinku. Zanim zaczniemy, pozwól, że pokrótce przypomnę, jak możesz wykorzystać mój podcast. Jeżeli czujesz się pewnie ze swoim angielskim, wystarczy, że przesłuchasz audycji. Dla tych z Was, którzy potrzebują odrobiny pomocy, pamiętajcie o notatkach do odcinka. Zatrzymuj podcast, przejrzyj notatki, w razie potrzeby powtórz nagranie. Zapisz się do newslettera za pośrednictwem strony angielskiskonradem.pl, by otrzymać natychmiastowy dostęp do notatek z tego i wszystkich poprzednich odcinków. Dostaniesz również powiadomienia o nowych odcinkach. Jeżeli masz pytania, uwagi bądź sugestie, skontaktuj się ze mną za pośrednictwem adresu angielskiskonradem@gmail.com bądź za pośrednictwem fanpage'a Angielski z Konradem na Facebooku. Switching to English.
Greetings! Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your humble host, Conrad. I hope you enjoyed the show. Today's episode is a rant of sorts. It's a topic that's been spinning in my mind lately. I go all around the world today, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Numbers of all sorts dominate our lives. We are obsessed by them, and not in a healthy way. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the subject matter, here's some useful vocabulary, just for you. Balance. Balance. Stan konta. Income. Income. Dochody. Interest. Interest. Odsetki. Debt. Debt. Dług. Refund. Refund. Zwrot pieniędzy. Believe it or not, I used to work at a call center. Yes, I was the guy who kept nagging you during your work hours about your mobile contract renewal. It wasn't much, but it was my first legal 9-to-5 job. I hated it. I had been working there only up until my scholarship at the university was approved, 3 or 4 months at most. The only thing I regret about it was that I didn't come to work in I Quit t-shirt for my last day in that hellhole. Let me tell you how it worked. I didn't sign any non-disclosure agreement, so I can safely disclose the secrets of the trade. If you have ever worked at a call center, you know what's coming. So, you had a daily quota of calls, and this is the number of calls you have to make every day. If you were below the number of calls you were required to make at the end of the day, your salary drastically went down. Fortunately, it worked both ways. You got a tiny bonus for exceeding the quota. Polish capitalism at its finest, ladies and gentlemen. That's not the end of it, however. All the calls you made were recorded and reviewed at the end of the week. If you were nice towards callers, if your voice was pleasant, your score from 0 to 100% went up. It worked the same way as the quota I mentioned earlier. You got a small bonus for high-quality calls and a large penalty for poor performance. Polish capitalism at its finest, ladies and gentlemen. So, what does it have to do with today's episode? Well, we are trained to pay attention to numbers from the moment we begin school, or earlier in some cases. A bigger amount of something is better than smaller amount. Higher numbers are better than lower. My job, as many others, was about getting the highest numbers and the best results. Otherwise, there was a queue of other naive youngsters just willing to take your position. That doesn't end with high notes at school, good exam scores, or some hopeless job. The trend continues into your adulthood. Higher bank balance, more expensive clothes, a premium car, a posh penthouse in a posh part of your town. That's how you can tell that somebody is successful, right? That's not so obvious nowadays. First of all, the rich have gained the ability to camouflage themselves. They are walking among us. Ooh. They don't wear expensive loafers and polo shirts. They don't tie their jumpers around their necks. They don't cruise in their yachts and drive around in exotic sports cars. Their focus on numbers make them unable to enjoy such luxuries. That brings two questions to my mind. Why do we remain obsessed with numbers in our adult lives? The second question is as follows. Does pursuing and eventually reaching higher numbers, or lower in some cases, actually make us happier beings? That's where Easterlin paradox comes into play. A paradox is a statement containing a logical fallacy, an error of sorts. Something is right or wrong at the same time. Take sentence, I'm a compulsive liar. I always lie, for example. If I tell you that I always lie, do I lie or tell the truth? Don't worry, Easterlin's paradox isn't as convoluted. It goes like this. The amount of income is indeed related to happiness. You make more money, you are happier, but to a point. You earn more and more, and you become happier and happier, sure. However, after you reach a specific level of earnings, your level of happiness stays the same. It doesn't go up anymore. It should by all means increase, but it stays constant after reaching a certain level of income. You will find the chart for Easterlin paradox in your notes. Be sure to check it out. It's different for every country, but the point remains. Being a multi-millionaire will not make you happy. More often than not, it will make your life harder, more miserable even. How? Well, for starters, you get paranoid. You see enemies everywhere. Everyone is out to get you and take your success away from you. You get surrounded by dishonest people who want to flex at your expense. So you fence yourself off the rest of the world. You begin your life anew, surrounded by like-minded people, away from all those pesky poor. Take Elon Musk, for example. One of the richest people in the world. Not everyone is able to afford launching a car into outer space. A few months ago, he has announced that he is getting rid of all of his possessions. Well, maybe not every single one of them, but most of them for sure. That's funny how rich people discover minimal living while we clutter our lives with stuff we don't necessarily need. Isn't it? While money is the main reason our minds are fixated on numbers, it's not the only one. We get caught up on any sorts of statistical data. I have been a victim of this myself recently. Ever since I discovered that I can view streaming data on Spotify, I got addicted to watching how my podcast fares. I became so obsessed by it that I began checking those numbers several times a day. And it's all thanks to you. Honestly, I never thought it would become as popular as it is. So thank you, with sugar on top. While we focus on increasing one numbers, we want others to go down. Case in point, rankings. It's exciting to see your name with the number 1 in front of it, or at least very close to it. It's my another daily fix to check whether the podcast went up in the rankings. And I can't help it. Seriously though, we should all ask ourselves, do I have to be number 1 all the time? Do I have to have the highest score, the highest account balance? It's not that I'm trying to convince you that all numbers are rubbish and you shouldn't pay any attention to them. That's not my point. The point is to ask ourselves, why is it so difficult to find a happy medium? Why are we constantly in one extreme only to be dragged into the other? You will find that in many cases, good is good enough. I don't have to be the greatest teacher ever. I don't even want to. As Marcus Aurelius had said, every day your life shortens and you get ever so slightly less of it. Is it worth wasting it on being worried about numbers all the time? I'll leave you with that question. Thank you for listening. In case you had forgotten, here's the revision of vocabulary for this episode with some example sentences. You will find those sentences at the very end of your notes with included translations, so you can try them yourself. You will hear each sentence twice. Let's begin. Balance. Balance. Stan konta. My account balance at the end of the month looks as empty as a drum. My account balance at the end of the month looks as empty as a drum. Income. Income. Dochody. Jerry decided to boost his income by Bitcoin farming. Jerry decided to boost his income by Bitcoin farming. Interest. Interest. Odsetki. The interest rate is killing me. I should never have taken a loan to buy a smartphone. The interest rate is killing me. I should never have taken a loan to buy a smartphone. Debt. Debt. Dług. Thanks for your help. I am forever in your debt. Thanks for your help. I am forever in your debt. Refund. Refund. Zwrot kosztów. Billy was surprised that you don't get a refund for used underwear. Billy was surprised that you don't get a refund for used underwear. Billy was surprised that you don't get a refund for used underwear.
And that's the conclusion of today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.